Is there a division in football right now with more questions than the AFC North? The Cleveland Browns. Who in the hell is going to play quarterback? For the Cincinnati Bengals, this may be the best team Joe Burrow has ever had around him since entering the league. The Baltimore Ravens enter a new era with Jesse Minter as their head coach. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, one last dance for that bad man, Aaron Rodgers. Let's get into it. Welcome to Gridiron and Beyond, episode 4. Before we get into all the meat and potatoes of this episode, just wanted to mention going forward for the next couple of episodes, we are strictly only going to be doing the rest of these team previews. Mainly because the main reason being is that I got to get these previews out before the season begins, just so they're out there for whoever your favorite team is, that I have my analysis on them. So we're just going to get right to that and hope you guys are having a great day whenever this episode does come out. The intention is, right now we're recording on Monday, August 17th, so the aim is in the next 24 to 48 hours. So stay tuned for when that drops. But here we go, and let's start and finish today with the AFC North, and we'll start with the Cleveland Browns. And as I mentioned in the intro, the Cleveland Browns have a massive question at quarterback and a lot of different things and new storylines for the Cleveland Browns this season. And it starts off with the quarterback position. Right now, I can't even list you a starter, but the guy with the most experience is Deshaun Watson. And obviously, if you're not a casual fan here, Deshaun Watson has been in the media, in the news for the last 5 to 6 years. And for about 9 out of 10 reasons, not the right reasons. Whether it's the off-the-field antics, not going to get into that, or whether it is his play on the field, which has been subpar at best. And on top of that, having the worst contract in NFL history, 5 years, $230 million, fully guaranteed, or whether it was the worst trade in NFL history, which, by the way, those were coincided with each other. Houston trading him to Cleveland, and Cleveland giving him that horrendous contract. So Deshaun Watson, as far as I'm aware, this is the final year of that contract. If it's not this year, then it's next year. But either way, this should be the last year of Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, regardless. Whether he's the starter or not, that remains to be seen. It's an ongoing quarterback battle with Shedeur Sanders. Yes, Shedeur Sanders, back at it for year number 2. Year 1, Pro Bowler Shedeur Sanders. Forgot to mention that part. The Pro Bowl has become a complete and utter joke, if that wasn't obvious. But Shedeur Sanders, showed some flashes here and there, but for the most part, it wasn't particularly great. But it's at least enough to at least give him another shot at this whole starter gig. So we'll see if he's able to get the job from Deshaun Watson, whether it is later in the season or whether it is the start of the season, they give him the role. There is some rumors right now going on Shedeur Sanders, whether or not he's going to be traded. We'll see. With the other quarterbacks they have in the room, they are probably going to keep 3 of them. So one of Sanders and then the next 2 guys I'll mention are certainly going to be a potential trade candidate. Maybe Dylan Gabriel is the other trade candidate. And here's a nice little transition here. Shout out to the Oregon Ducks. Dylan Gabriel, of course, former Oregon Duck. He was at a lot of schools in college. Oklahoma, Central Florida as well. I think it was Central Florida. But Dylan Gabriel, one of 3 lefty quarterbacks in the league right now. The other 2 are on the same team, which we did talk about in a previous episode. Make sure you guys go watch that on the channel. But Dylan Gabriel, just a smaller quarterback, older quarterback coming into the league. I feel like he's on the outside looking in when it comes to getting the starting job. I feel like the starting job is down to either Watson or Sanders. And then they did draft Taylon Green out of Arkansas in the 6th round of this past draft. a project, but at the end of the day, guy's super athletic. I think he ran a 4.37 40 for a quarterback. I mean, you can get that for like a wide receiver, and you're really pleased. And this is a quarterback. So a lot of athleticism there, but again, really raw, needs to at least sit the year, maybe even two, to get his ability down at quarterback if he's ever to start in this league. Or maybe he can move positions at some point, who knows. The running back room is at least something to look forward to. Year two each for Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson. Sampson's going to be more of your speedster receiving back. Judkins is probably the more so every down back. Judkins ended last season with the injury, so you're hoping that doesn't have a massive effect on him going into this year. And Sampson had a lot of time last year with Raheem Sanders, who is now running back 3 on this team, but he should be able to get some looks as more of like a power back situation, very short term, like 4th and 1s, 3rd and 2s, if they're going to run the football, that kind of situation. The wide receiver core is in a bit of a remodel, a disaster of a core last year, to say the least, trying some new people out. And it's kind of the same thing here. We're trying some new people out while bringing some others, back into the fold. Jerry Jeudy remains here. I personally don't think this is going to be the wide receiver 1 for this team. Like right now, he probably is, because we're still trying to figure out what the 2 rookies deal are, which are KC Concepcion, their first round pick, and their second round pick, Denzel Boston, which apparently has been raising some heads in camp as to being a nice potential player for this upcoming season. But both guys should start, KC and Denzel, and I like that right away, because instead of going back to what didn't work last year, let's get the new faces in the building and let's see what they, are able to provide, because clearly last year it wasn't good enough. And I had guys like Isaiah Bond out there. Isaiah Bond's not a bad player, had some off the field stuff, hence why he went undrafted. And once his thing got cleared up, Cleveland was right there to sign him. It's bizarre how Cleveland just finds their way in these situations. Cedric Tillman's kind of been on and off in his career. University of Tennessee, I liked him coming out of the draft. He's been kind of whatever since entering the league. And Tylan Wallace, a former Baltimore Raven, following the head coach, who's now the Browns head coach, now was a former Ravens offensive coordinator. So the connection does make sense. Tight end, new era, David Njoku from 2017 was the tight end. No longer he is there. We will get into them eventually down the line, what team he is on. But Harold Fannin, this is his room at tight end. Fantasy owners, if you're looking for a tight end at some point, this is probably one of my 5 guys I'd recommend to you. The wide receiver core is still a work in progress. And Harold Fannin was really good last year with the quarterback disaster that there is. So if there's a disaster this year at quarterback, I don't see why a guy like Harold Fannin would take like a big step back, barring like a massive scheme change. And even like a Todd Monken, who's now the head coach, does like the tight end quite a bit. Had 2 or even 3 pretty good tight ends over there in Baltimore, which we'll get to Baltimore later for their starting tight end. But obviously, both of the other 2 tight ends are now out the building for Baltimore. But either way, that's a different conversation. And Joe Royer is the backup, a little bit of an experiment there. We'll see what that can offer. The offensive line is in a little bit of a retooling. I don't want to say a rebuild, because I think this is a solid offensive line that has the capability of being really good if it's healthy and on the field. Spencer Fano, their other first-round pick, top 10 pick overall. Fano, to me, is a very safe pick. It reminds me a lot last year of like Kelvin Banks. Not the player comparison, but more so the floor of Fano is very like a serviceable football player to, like where he can be a starter. The ceiling can be great, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But this might be the first real left tackle that the Browns have had on their team since Joe Thomas retired. And now Joe Thomas in the Hall of Fame, the Iron Man that he was. They were able to sign Zion Johnson, from the Los Angeles Chargers. This was the Chargers' best offensive lineman last year when they were on the, it's the second best when they were on the field. I kind of forgot that Joe Alt was like barely on the field, but when he was the best guy. Rashawn Slater wasn't there at all. But Zion Johnson was the next best guy. But that's not really saying a whole lot because the Chargers' offensive line last year was a complete disaster. But Zion Johnson's not a bad player. Now joins the Cleveland Browns. Elgton Jenkins got released by the Green Bay Packers after having a pretty successful career there. He's now the center for Cleveland. And Tevin Jenkins is the right guard. Had a stint last year with Cleveland, was able to be brought back. And the right tackle is newly traded for Titus Howard. And also got himself an extension as well. So it's trying out some new things. Zion Johnson is new. The only guy that was on that offensive line last year was Tevin Jenkins. Joel Bitonio retired. Wyatt Teller is gone. Ethan Pocic is gone. Jack Conklin is gone. So a very new offensive line. So I like the trajectory of this one a little bit better. Mainly due to the fact that it's now younger, although has some experience. So we'll see what that looks like. And speaking of something looking different, the defense certainly looks different. No more Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett out the door. But they were able to make that trade and get that extra first-round pick and save some money. And clearly to the Cleveland Browns, Myles Garrett just never fit the timeline anymore for what this team is going to be doing. The Browns are trying to get younger. They're trying to have people in their timeline develop together. And by the time that they would have developed, together to get to a point where it can be a really solid core, Myles Garrett would have just been too old for that and maybe not be the same player that he was. Now, he's a freak, so maybe that's, counterproductive. However, they felt like the deal that they got was pretty fair overall. And we'll just have to see down the line if this is something that is going to make sense. So we'll see. But new core, though, on the defensive line, although, some things are, the same as well. Some things are different when it comes to the defensive coordinator. No longer Jim Schwartz after he felt like he was screwed out of the head coaching job. But you still got Alex Wright, just a solid rotational pass rusher, but has shown some flashes to be really good. The main piece they got back in the Myles Garrett trade is Jared Verse. And I think the reason they didn't get that extra first-round pick like fans were maybe expecting is because they value Jared Verse as a first-round pick caliber player. Making sense considering he was drafted in the first round. But Jared Verse has had a really successful career so far. Guy that was born and raised in Ohio. So, hey, he's now back home and looking to start this new era, if you want to call it that, off for the Cleveland Browns defense. Isaiah McGuire will get in there from time to time. Mason Graham, was it 5th or 6th overall? I believe it was 5th overall, so top 5 pick Mason Graham. Showed some flashes to be a really solid player, and I think he's only going to grow. And honestly, he might even be my breakout candidate for this team. Yeah, I'm going to lock that in. No more Myles Garrett. Someone on the defensive line is going to step up. I think it'll be Mason Graham. You got Malik Collins in there for some veteran presence. Mike Hall Jr., if he's able to get on the field, I think he can turn into something pretty solid. Another guy from Ohio State. So you got to hope for that, obviously. We'll see what happens with all that. Carson Schwessinger at middle linebacker. Defensive Rookie of the Year he is. And he had an awesome year. In even points of that year, he was injured, and yet he still performed like a damn good linebacker. The first pick of the second round in 2025. This is a really good player, and it was a little bit worrisome for Cleveland when they lost JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. It's like, what are they going to do now at linebacker? Obviously, you could sign someone for quite a bit of money, but you got to be able to develop that talent. And Jim Schwartz, I'm sure, had a nice hand in making Schwessinger the player that he is, but I think Carson Schwessinger is going to be just fine without him. He has the absolute tool set to make himself an even better player in 2026. Quincy Williams, also in this core as well, coming over from the Jets. and you got Justin Jefferson. No, not that Justin Jefferson, which we talked about in the last episode. Make sure you guys go watch it. But Alabama's Justin Jefferson. Going to be a little bit of like a tweener, like can rush the passer a little bit, but also has the ability to drop back into coverage. Again, 5th round pick, I believe, or so not going to get all the playing time in the world, but should be able to get out there on special teams at the very least. The corner room is a little bit of a work in progress when it comes to depth, but you can't question Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward has been incredible. 2018 first round pick, same class that Baker Mayfield was drafted in, and he's been everything and more that went to Ohio State, and he got to stay home in Cleveland. He's everything that the Browns have asked for since he's entered the building. Absolutely a Browns, we're coming up on the legend at this point, and I don't think Denzel Ward has really gotten the credit that he deserves. He seriously, honestly, should be in those top 5 corner conversations year in and year out. Yet I feel like he hasn't really gotten that love and recognition. So shout out to Denzel Ward. You're getting it from me. Tyson Campbell, the trade that the Jaguars and the Browns made last year. Tyson Campbell coming over to the Cleveland Browns. I think he's still got potential. We'll see what he's able to do there. Showed some flashes overall in both Jacksonville and Cleveland so far. We'll see if he can take that next step to being like this great cornerback. I don't think he's great, but I think he is a good corner. Miles Harden is probably going to be your slot. Miles Bryant fitting in there too. Not my favorite combination of the two. I know they had Martin Emerson at one point. Obviously, he's no longer there, as I am not mentioning him. So we'll see what goes on there. I like the safety room. Ronnie Hickman, Grant Delpit, but I think my most intriguing part of this is the fact that they were able to get him in the second round is pretty crazy. The Toledo safety, which I had mocked in my first round all those months back, obviously not on the channel since I kind of just started here, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. I thought he was going to maybe be in the conversation of being picked ahead of Dylan Thieneman, who was talked about in the last episode with the Chicago Bears. But McNeil-Warren gets, Toledo guy, gets to stay in Ohio. I think it's a really fun pick and an absolute steal for Cleveland and what they were able to get for him. Andre Schmidt, or Smith, however you say that, is going to be the kicker. Corey Bajorquez is going to be the punter. Todd Monken, year 1 of head coach. And maybe that's my concern here, is Todd Monken's never been a head coach before. And sometimes when you hear that, you think it's a younger head coach. Todd Monken's in his 60s. So I don't know how much longer. And look, coaches can coach into their 70s. So if Todd Monken's a successful coach, he'll be doing this 7-8 years. And, maybe down the line eventually retires. Maybe he can do this even a decade. But Todd Monken wasn't this, can't miss, head coach that was on the market. Think about guys that became available, like Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh. Those are guys have been successful of being head coaches. Hence why Denver traded for Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh left Michigan to go to the Chargers. But Todd Monken's not a guarantee to be this great head coach because we've never seen him be a head coach. So I'm curious how that's to work. And on top of that, what is it going to look like from the quarterback position? Is it Deshaun Watson? Is it Sanders? Are we going to see Dylan Gabriel? Is it someone outside of the organization that eventually will take over? We don't know. And I like the young core. I like Judkins. I see the potential in KC and Denzel Boston, Harold Fannin Jr. The offensive line's a little bit of a retool. Defensively, I think you clearly are going to take a step back. No Jim Schwartz, no Myles Garrett. So it's going to be some growing pains there, although I like some pieces on that team. I'm just not really sold on Cleveland being this perennial contender, especially in this division when you have, I think, 2 potential powerhouses, depending on how things go. And on top of that, a consistent team that's always finding their way in the playoffs somehow. So Cleveland, I think until that quarterback is found, I currently don't think the quarterback for the future of the Browns is on this roster. So until that's found, we'll wait and see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is Shedeur Sanders time. But until I really see it, and I haven't really seen it yet, I'm not bought in personally. But again, the nucleus around it to when the quarterback comes into the building is really solid. But it's going to be a year or two or maybe even three until we see real results, in my opinion. But we'll get to the Cincinnati Bengals. And the start of this video, I truly believe that this is the best Bengals team that Joe Burrow has had on paper. Now, on paper and on the field are two completely different scenarios and two completely different things. And with one of those teams, Joe Burrow was able to make the Super Bowl. It's crazy. And obviously, unfortunately, lost. But, and that was with a not so great offensive line. The offensive line here isn't particularly the best either, but we'll get to that. And we'll start with Joe Burrow. This is one of the best 5 quarterbacks in football when on the field. I have to say when on the field with a lot sometimes, but I need to emphasize that with Joe Burrow. Not hurt every single year of his career, but he did have the torn ACL in his rookie year. I think he even tore his MCL and LCL as well. It was a horrific injury. And then last year he was dealing with some stuff. And he came back at the end of the year and performed pretty decently well. But it was too late at that point. There was no real hope that they were going to get themselves into the playoffs. Maybe a quick little smidget second, but not anything to work. Even if they made the playoffs, they weren't a true contender to win the AFC with how everything was going there. But Joe Burrow is the QB. Joe Flacco is also here still as the Bengals backup. He was on Cleveland last year, traded to Cincinnati. And is this the last ride for Joe Flacco? Maybe so. We'll see. And I just wanted to write this guy's name in here because I found it so funny that they have Joe Flacco, who's 41 going on 42. And they also have Josh Johnson, who's also 39 going on 40 or 40 going on 41, and he's been on 15 teams in his career. I just find that funny that if Joe Burrow goes down, the season relies on someone who's at least 40 years old, whether it is Flacco or Josh Johnson. So, just found that funny. The Bengals, though, we know the weapons around Cincinnati. They have great weapons around them, starting with Chase Brown, who they talk about a lot, man. They love Chase Brown over there in Cincinnati. Expect a big year from him. Samaj Pirine as the backup. Taj Brooks could get some time at that third back, but this is probably more Chase Brown backfield. Sprinkle in some Samaj Pirine in there. So we'll see what Chase Brown's able to do. Good receiver threat in screen games and just dump off passes, and does run himself really hard. So we'll see what he's able to do there. From a wide receiver perspective, this is one of the best wide receiver cores in the league, and I would honestly not even argue this is the best wide receiver core in the league. It's Jamar Chase. And that's, you have to mention receiver 2 as well, but Jamar Chase is one of the best receivers in all of football. T. Higgins is probably the best wide receiver 2 in all of football. Him and George Pickens is neck and neck. Andre Ioshivas is a fun little slot wide receiver. Colby Young, Mitchell Tinsley, Charlie Jones. The Bengals love mixing in receivers on top of the main 2 that they have. So hence why I mentioned 6 different guys that could get some time. Charlie Jones is mostly a punt returner. But the Bengals receiver core on the field doesn't need to be questioned. And it sometimes baffles me. Last year, before Joe Flacco got traded for, we had Jake Browning playing for the Bengals, and Jake Browning actually showed some success in a previous season, and he goes out there and shits the bed when it comes to throwing the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It didn't make much sense to me at all, and they had to go and trade for a 41-year-old quarterback to save their season. Crazy. So this receiver core, Joe Burrow on the field, like it a lot. It's elite. It's an elite core. You look at the tight end room, Mike Gesicki still going in this Bengals room. Just a serviceable tight end. Doesn't need to be anything too crazy. So that's Mike Gesicki. Drew Samples still being the backup here. I honestly kind of forgot that he even was the backup of the Cincinnati Bengals because they did draft Eric All Jr. A couple years ago now, I think. So we'll see where that stands. But clearly tight end one, like the main receiver threat in that tight end room is Gesicki. You look at the offensive line for this Bengals team, and it's a very similar offensive line to last year. Whether that's a good thing or not remains to be seen. Still Orlando Brown Jr., Dylan Fairchild, Ted Karras, Dalton Reisner, and Amarius Mims. I'm not predicting him to be my breakout player, but I think we need to see Amarius Mims take that next step and be in a very solidified side on Joe Burrow's right side. Because Orlando Brown has been a successful tackle for a lot of his career. He's had some bit down moments since he's gotten to Cincinnati, but overall has been solid enough. But that right side, whether it is been... I can't even name you the tackles that were with Joe Burrow when he was on the right side of the offensive line. So hopefully Amarius Mims, a former first-round pick, is able to take that step up to where we don't really have any questions about it. So we'll see what happens there. The Bengals defense has been the story, though, for the last 2 years. They have this elite offense that can score 30 to 35 points a game, if all on the field. But the defense allows 30 to 35 to hell, maybe even 38 points a game. Or at the very least, not points per game, but it's like when the Bengals score 30, they allow 34. If they score 24, they allow 28 to 31. And there was even time last year they scored 35 and they allowed, or actually they scored 42 and they allowed 48 to the Chicago Bears. So you got to get to the point of upgrading this defense, and they did. Is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. But is it going to be probably the best defense Joe Burrow's had since coming to the Cincinnati Bengals? One can argue. But you get to this Bengals defense, and they spent the money. They signed Boye Mafe from the championship-winning Seattle Seahawks. More so, I think they signed him based off of the potential they saw earlier on in his career. Mafe this past season was kind of rotating in from time to time, but I think they're banking on his potential of being that guy in year, I believe, 2 or 3 it was for Boye Mafe. Shamar Stewart is also still here. Last year, I feel like kind of was a rough one for Shamar Stewart. Not really his fault when it comes to the contract negotiations that happened with him. The Bengals not trying to fully guarantee his contract, adding void years in it for a first-round rookie. I don't remember the last time that's ever happened. So just kind of got off on the bad foot. You're hoping it's water under the bridge and that they can get this thing going. Was dealing with a little bit of injury in camp, so we'll see what that is about. As far as I'm aware, he's not done for the year or anything, but hopefully he's able to make an impact when he does make his return. Myles Murphy still here. Feel like we really haven't seen the breakout of a Myles Murphy. Not sure if that's going to happen, but he's another former first-round pick, so they have invested in it. It just hasn't really turned out the way that they've thought. And they did draft Cassius Howell in the second round of this past draft out of Texas A&M. Not the biggest Cassius Howell fan. I get why people like him, but I can't get over the whole short arms thing. It's mentioned a lot when it comes to the NFL combine process, is those type of players with short arms aren't able to translate that to the league. And I do believe that. We haven't had a guy with 10 sacks in a season in 20 years. So obviously sacks aren't the whole story, pressures and stopping the run. And, if he provides the pressure on somebody and then someone else gets a sack, he'll never get the credit. But is he able to do that? Because the sack thing doesn't necessarily matter that much, but he can't be a non-factor either. Because Myles Murphy at points has been a non-factor. Shamar Stewart all last season was a non-factor. So they had to invest in this line. They did with Mafe, and they're going to hope for the development of Shamar Stewart, and they still have Myles Murphy and Cassius Howell now in the building. So we'll see. But what's going to help this as well is having great defensive linemen, as in the sense of the defensive tackle position, and that is one trade of Sexy Dexy, Dexter Lawrence. Now, behind me, you see my New York Giants football. If anyone has not watched this channel yet, and this is your first time watching, I am a New York Giants fan. Seeing Dexy go is unfortunate, but I think it's very clear if you were following at the time of Dexter Lawrence requesting a trade, he just didn't want to be a Giant anymore. whether that was the new regime, whether that was his contract, whether it was trying to win and he didn't really believe in the Giants that they were going to win. He requested a trade, and he got traded to the Cincinnati Bengals for the 10th overall pick. Overall, I was happy with it, although we'll get into the Giants in a different team preview, and I'll mention my concern of not having Dexter Lawrence. But Dexter Lawrence helps the Cincinnati Bengals team a lot. I know last year was a bit of a down year. You can say it was the elbow that was a problem for him. You can say it was a lack of effort. But either way, I think him on a new team now with having another good defensive lineman around him, because I think the last couple years, from at least the defensive tackle position, Dexter Lawrence didn't really have much to work with in New York. He did have, the pass rushers on paper, but he didn't really have any D tackle 2 next to him that were capable. So we'll see what happens there. Now that he has Jonathan Allen as his other guy, for cap casualty reasons, he was cut by Minnesota. Now heads to the Bengals, and I like this duo of Dexter Lawrence and Jonathan Allen, former rivals in the NFC East, now coming together in Cincinnati. Like that quite a bit. Former New York Giant B.J. Hill is also still here. T.J. Slayton could rotate in a little bit as well. So on paper, this has the potential to be a really good defensive line. When we talk about those pass rushers like Amafe, Stewart, Murphy, Howell, and then you get those guys on helping them out, Lawrence and Jonathan Allen, and B.J. Hill on occasion as well. The linebacker core is where I'm still a little concerned. This is the one bit of I'm a little concerned, and that's Demetrius Knight. I like Demetrius Knight, but he was an older prospect coming out of the NFL draft. I've talked about that. It's on my Instagram page in a short. It's a YouTube short on here as well on how I feel about the draft process and who's on my board, who's not. Demetrius Knight, I didn't mind as a player, but again, the guy was 24 years old coming out, now 25. He's going on 26, I believe, going into year 2. And he's got the tools to make it work, but he's the linebacker 1 of this core. Not a big fan of it as of yet, but maybe he is taking that step up in year 2. Barrett Carter as the other linebacker, bit of an undersized guy, but showed some stuff last year, but wasn't particularly great. Again, 4th-round rookie, playing a lot of time. Probably needed another year or 2 to make himself a better player. Oren Burks was kind of, So this is the linebacker core. I really couldn't find much depth on it either. More so the depth was from the pass rusher stuff. So see how that looks. Corner room is looking... I like the trajectory of it a little bit more than maybe some others would say. Dax Hill could play some safety if you want him to, but he's more so transitioned into a corner now. My breakout candidate for the Cincinnati Bengals is DJ Turner. I like DJ Turner a lot coming out of Michigan, and great speed. And I think he's going to get the technicalities down to being a big-time corner. Showed a lot of flashes last year, and I think he's going to put all the pieces together for this year. So I like that quite a bit. Takario Davis, they drafted in the 3rd or 4th round of this past draft. Really big corner. So we'll see what he's able to do. More so probably be a special teamer early on. And again, because Dax Hill's a safety, the corner room is a bit of a question mark, in my opinion. So we'll see how that works. But with DJ Turner, I think going to have a breakout year. I do like the trajectory of this a little bit more. But safety-wise, and this is maybe why Dax Hill goes to corner now more often, because they signed Brian Cook from the Kansas City Chiefs, which I like quite a bit. I like the trajectory of Jordan Battle this year as well, and they were able to sign Kyle Duggar from the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there's quite a bit of retooling on this defense, a lot of new players, while also kind of still banking on the development of some other players. So we'll see how that works. Evan McPherson is your kicker. Ryan Recco, I thought it was Rello for a second. Recco is your punter for this year. Zach Taylor, still the head coach. And there's real argument that Zach Taylor probably could have been fired after 2025. But it's clear that the Bengals upper management still believes in him and what he's able to do, and still holding on to that 2021 season going into 2022 when they made the Super Bowl. So, but they've missed the playoffs the last couple years. So now it's time to, at the very least, get back to the playoffs. That's the goal, at the very least. Because if you don't get back to the playoffs and there's not really much excuses anymore, I don't know why Zach Taylor would be in a job. Because this past cycle, there were 10 new head coach hires. And 3 of them were in this division. We just talked about one of them, and we're going to talk about 2 more of them. So the fact that you saw all of your division rivals change things up a little bit. One of them didn't really want to change things up with Mike Tomlin resigning. Point being, every one of them are changing things up, and you didn't. So you clearly believe in what you guys are doing. So you went out there, you spent the money and the resources to make this defense the most probably capable defense on paper that Joe Burrow has had. Put that with the offense that they have right now. The Bengals have a very kind of under the radar feeling going into 2026 because everyone is talking about those teams right now. But Cincinnati, people are talking about them, of course, because Joe Burrow is the quarterback. But now that there's a lot of new feeling around this Bengals defense, there's something to talk about here. So we'll see what happens with the Cincinnati Bengals in 2026, but the trajectory looks really good. But we'll see if they're able to compete with some of those other teams that have been consistently in the playoffs for all those years. But we'll get to another team that, as we mentioned, year 1 of the Jesse Minter era. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. 18 years of John Harbaugh, and I would say a very successful tenure. Look, 1 Super Bowl in 18 years, people are going to be like, 1 Super Bowl is a successful tenure. And considering how it ended, I'm sure people probably don't think it was a successful tenure. But this is one of the more successful head coaches in the 20th century. The 21st century. That's a blooper. I'm keeping it in. Why not? But the Baltimore Ravens, new era, though. I mean, not a new era from a team perspective, but from a head coach perspective. But the quarterback remains the same, Lamar Jackson. We'll maybe go through a top 10 quarterbacks list at some point. Let me know if y'all want that. But Lamar Jackson is certainly one of the league's best. 2-time MVP. Some argue a potential could have been 3-time MVP. But Lamar is one of the league's best, and some of y'all say he hasn't shown up in the big games, and he has his moments for sure. But this is one of the quarterbacks that you want as your quarterback. Again, had some injury things, here and there, but I'm not trying to hear all that, honestly. Look, Lamar has been one of the league's best. So if he's the quarterback of this Baltimore Ravens team, there is no doubt that they have all the right pieces in place. Just Lamar, you're set up for success. But you need good pieces around him as well. Like any quarterback. I mean, there are very few quarterbacks in the NFL history that can do it by himself. This is a team game. And I know that's the semi-PR answer, but this is a team game. It ain't on one person all the time. Just simply isn't true. But anyway, moving on from that conversation. Derrick Henry's the running back. One of the best running backs I have had the privilege of watching since he's gotten to the league. And still is an absolute tank in his 30s. Him and Lamar, extremely unfair combination. You put that with other running backs, because it's not just Derrick Henry's backfield. Derrick Henry is the main RB1. But they can sprinkle in Justice Hill from time to time as a receiver threat with a lot of speed. They seem to like Rasheen Ali quite a bit. No more Keaton Mitchell there, which they also liked as well. So they drafted Adam Randall out of Clemson. Big back, 6'3", 230 pounds. So this is your power back in situations where I want to say Derrick Henry's injured, knock on wood, but also to give Derrick Henry a bit of a rest as well. But Adam Randall more so is probably going to be a special teamer in his first year with Baltimore. The receiver core is very similar with a little bit of some new blood in there. There's some new blood, but more so for depth purposes. But one guy's probably going to start right away. Zay Flowers is back-to-back Pro Bowl wide receiver. Zay Flowers to y'all. Is he as good as what he got paid, which is that 4-year, $140 million extension? No, absolutely not. Look, it needed to get done. You needed to bring back Zay Flowers because Lamar Jackson loves him quite a bit. Baltimore clearly loves him quite a bit. But he is not as good as Justin Jefferson. And why do I bring Justin Jefferson into the conversation? Because he's getting paid the exact same as him. And I went into the talk about the Vikings in the last episode. I have Justin Jefferson as my wide receiver 1. So Zay Flowers, is he even a top 10 guy? I don't know about all that. But he's in that top 15 to top 20 conversation. But he's being paid like a top 5 guy. But either way, this is still a good player. Let's not, spread the narrative that he ain't good. Let's just say that he ain't as good as he's getting paid. But that's sometimes the league. The league and people get paid. The market, it is moving quite a bit. Look at the quarterback contracts. You tell me that top 5. Is that the real top 5 in the NFL? Not at all. Rashad Bateman is still also on this team. Rashad Bateman's not a bad player. He's just had some injury things. Very different receiver than what, than Zay Flowers. Bateman's like a bigger body. Go up and get it. So we'll see what that looks like in another year with Rashad Bateman. Jacoby Lane is going to be the wide receiver 3. And there's a lot of love early on with Jacoby Lane. He looked really good in the preseason debut that has happened already with the against the Philadelphia Eagles, and he looks really promising. So, and this is a guy that Jesse Minter, was able to scout and watch, and this is his guy. Some of these other guys that go with new head coaches and everything, those aren't their guys. As I mentioned in the I'll just bring this up real quick about the Tennessee Titans review. Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll, they're not Calvin Ridley guys. Calvin Ridley was there when they got there, but they were able to bring in Wan'Dale Robinson and Carnell Tate. So that's why those guys' trajectories are higher. So when you look at a Rashad Bateman, for example, Jesse Minter wasn't his coach, but Jacoby Lane just got to the league now, and Jesse Minter is his coach. He was able to bring him to Baltimore. Minter got there to Baltimore, and Bateman was already there. And it's different because some guys are just that good. So like Zay Flowers, for example, that's a reason Minter goes there to be a head coach. A reason. And look at Lamar, and just the culture of the Baltimore Ravens fits what Jesse Minter wants. So, but a guy like Rashad Bateman, not saying he's replaceable or anything, but he's not a core piece of what you're looking for. He's not core. He's not a guy we need to keep 100%. He's a good player. So it's different. It's hard to explain at points, but we're just going to continue to move on here. With Tez Walker, they got still. They also drafted Elijah Surratt, one of many good players out of Indiana to get drafted this year. National champions they are over there. And LaJohntay Wester, probably going to be more so a return man. Just wanted to mention him in case it does go down that route. Tight end room is going to look very different. Excuse me. Tight end room is going to look very different. Mark Andrews is the only exception to that. Been the tight end 1 for the Ravens since 2019. All-time leader in, I think, yards for the Ravens. I don't know if it was yards or touchdowns. Mark Andrews has become a guy that's going to be etched in Ravens history. I think most Ravens fans probably feel he should have been, released or traded, and they should have brought back the younger core, guys like Isaiah Likely, Charlie Culler. But both of them left, and they stuck their guns with Mark Andrews. So now it's about finding some depth there. They brought in Durham Smythe, but on the Dolphins last year, more of a blocker, in my opinion. Can catch some passes if you want him to. But they did draft Matthew Hibner. So maybe that eventually becomes your tight end 2. So not awful there. Offensive line-wise, it's a bit of it's a work in progress, but there's things to like. Ronnie Stanley, it's about being on the field. Last year was, which is cool, but he has had that injury history. So you got to hope that he's on the field for quite a bit of it. You got John Simpson back. John Simpson was on the Raiders and the Ravens, and then he was signed with the Jets. Now he's back with the Ravens. So good to get him back. Just a solid player. Ethan Pocic is your new center. No more Tyler Linderbaum. That one's going to hurt for sure. Pocic is not awful, but he ain't Tyler Linderbaum. So that's that. They did draft Vega Ione. I don't know if I have my mock draft in my notes, but I'm saying this, honestly, that's who I had the Ravens as my, perfect fit. I think in the mock draft I had a different pick for Baltimore because I don't even know what I did for the Ravens. But anyway, in one of my mocks, I had the Ravens getting Ione. Made all the sense in the world because if the Ravens had to watch Daniel Falele, and I'm watching him on the Giants right now, he's completely terrible. Can attest, Ravens fans. If they had to watch him again play, they would have had a stroke. Seriously. It is so frustrating to watch Daniel Falele try and be a guard in the NFL. And yeah, first game with the Giants, again, as I said, can attest. He's horrible. So, Ione, the 14th overall pick. This is somebody that I think is going to step in and be damn good right away. Again, a guard at 14 might be a little high, but I do believe he's going to be really good. Roger Rosengard at right tackle. I like him quite a bit. Could be a potential breakout candidate. I don't like to have offensive line as breakout candidates because, let's be honest, even the diehard fans aren't watching the offensive line like that all the time. Mostly you get that kind of stuff from a Pro Football Focus and everything. So we'll see how that works, though. But the Ravens' offensive line trajectory looks good. It's just about being healthy and the development of their first-round pick, Ione. So we'll see what that looks like. Defense overall, I think, honestly, as I kind of mentioned with certain people, last episode with the Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell is just a weapon. Just you think about Kyler Murray and what he has around him, all the weapons he has around him. I added Kevin O'Connell to that because that's just another tool to have with how much of a genius he is on the offensive side of the ball. I kind of feel that way about Jesse Minter on the Ravens. Obviously the pieces on this defense are still really good. There's some great pieces on this defense. But I think they can get themselves to an even bigger level now that you have Jesse Minter coaching it. And Nnamdi Madubuike was awesome in 2024. Injured in 2025. So you got to get him back on the field. And luckily his neck injury is not a career-ending one. So glad to hear that, of course. So he's back on the field. Calais Campbell is also back with the Baltimore Ravens. This is probably his final year. I believe he even announced it's his final year, but what a career he's had with the Arizona Cardinals, the Jaguars, the Ravens. He was on the Dolphins for a little bit. There's another team in there that I just can't think of. Yeah, there's another team I can't think of, but then it was Arizona again. Now he's on Baltimore to finish his career. So Calais Campbell, also amazing human being. So add that veteranness to the room. Broderick Washington could get in there from time to time. Travis Jones, who was given an extension by them. John Jenkins, bit of an older guy as well. So you got Jenkins and Campbell. So that's certainly some veteran presences in there. You got Tavius Robinson, who's going to be more of a rotational pass rusher, but might end up taking a step up this year. So like that quite a bit. And the Ravens didn't have nothing short of controversy. Their main big pass rusher move was supposed to be Max Crosby. But instead, a very controversial last-second pullout of the trade. Say it's medical reasons. They say, that's what they said. But they were able to quickly pivot and sign Trey Hendrickson. And Trey Hendrickson, the former Cincinnati Bengal, kind of knew he wasn't going to be sticking around in Cincinnati. This is one of the only consistent defenders on Cincinnati the last couple years when the Bengals defense has been completely horrendous. And now heads to the rival Baltimore Ravens. And that should be a lot of fun to watch. Him going up against the Bengals twice a year. And on top of that, being a big-time pass rusher in that Ravens room. So I like the signing quite a bit. How I feel about the controversy and everything doesn't really matter. But he is there, and that's kind of all that really matters, honestly. So you got Trey Hendrickson in there. They drafted Zion Young in this past draft out of Mizzou. Mike Green last year, so you're hoping for one of those guys to take a step up. Probably Mike Green is my guess. Adisa Isaac is more of your special teamer, but he showed some nice athletic traits when he came out of Penn State. That linebacker core is not too bad. And honestly, right now, Roquan Smith is just one of the best linebackers in all of football. I probably have him number 2 or 3 right now on my middle linebackers list if we're ranking them. But Roquan Smith has just been purely consistent. Chicago was really good. Chicago didn't want to pay him. They sent him to Baltimore, and he's become everything Baltimore's wanted him to be. So shout out Roquan Smith. He has been so good for the Ravens. Tedye Buchanan is athletic traits for sure, but hasn't shown too much yet, but is lined to start next to Roquan Smith. So you got to hope that he's somebody that can step up in that room. Jay Higgins they also have. They also have Trenton Simpson. So, again, a lot of athleticism in that room. It's just a matter of if one of those guys are going to take that step up and being a big-time contributor for the Ravens as a starter. But special team, again, that's the thing with guys that are starters or not starters. You got to be able to play special teams. And I know that's boring because everyone's just looking, the casual fan especially, is only looking at what they can do when it's 11v11. And from 11v11 offense defense. But special teams matters so much. And the Ravens have put so much emphasis. That's one thing John Harbaugh was really good at, was finding special teams that worked. And we're not just talking kicker punter. We're talking about guys that were able to play special teams at a high level. So now that he's not there, it's curious how some of these guys that aren't starters are going to be able to do on special teams. So we'll see. Corners in that safety room, Nate Wiggins. Bit of an injury scare in that training camp, but he is going to be good to go, which is awesome to hear. So shout out Nate Wiggins. I was going to put him as my breakout candidate. I'm going to, yeah. Nate Wiggins is my breakout candidate. And, maybe that's, I don't know if that's necessarily a fair answer, but we're talking Pro Bowl for Nate Wiggins. And I'm not talking about a Pro Bowl alternate and getting him in there. I think there's a chance he could be a Pro Bowler in 2026. Again, the tape backs it up as well. There's some times where, stats-wise won't show it. I know stats don't lie. Numbers don't lie. But I think he's going to put it all together this year with Jesse Minter as his head coach. I think this is going to be one of the big beneficiaries of it. So I like Nate Wiggins quite a bit this year for the Ravens. Marlon Humphrey's still here. I still like Marlon Humphrey quite a bit. Not as great as he once was, but this is still if this is your corner 2, you're not mad at it at all. So that's Marlon Humphrey. Kyle Hamilton's listed as the nickel corner, which is interesting. Probably going to be that Brian Branch role, as I've kind of said a couple times. Guy that can play some nickel corner, but a guy that can also hop back to safety if you want him to. Bit of a new role for him, so I'm curious how he'll do. But because he's such an established star, I'm not really too worried about his role. I was more so worried about him when he was coming out of the draft. But then he goes to the Baltimore Ravens, which, by the way, that'll be a common theme on this channel, is a guy that I'm not really too big of a fan of coming out of the draft. They just kind of go to a spot where I just have a feeling that they're going to figure it out with them. I have a couple guys like that. I won't get into it too much now. But I like Kyle Hamilton quite a bit. In the role that he's in now, we'll see. Chidobe Awuzie, they brought back as well. They still have TJ Tampa. You get to that safety room. Malachi Starks was my other potential breakout candidate. I liked him quite a bit coming out of Georgia. Predicted him to the Baltimore Ravens last year, and now with Jesse Minter, I think he could be even better than he was last year. They brought in Jalen Hawkins from the New England Patriots, and he had an absolute breakout year with the Patriots. He was in Atlanta for a little bit, was like all right, mildly okay. Now goes to the Patriots and balls out with Mike Vrabel. Now heads to the Baltimore Ravens, and I guess hence Kyle Hamilton moving over to nickel corner. So we'll see how that looks there. And Kayvon Wallace, not really expecting much, more of a special teamer. Just wanted to mention him. Tyler Loop is the kicker. I know Ravens fans are not really the biggest fans of Tyler Loop because they missed the playoffs. But hey, think about it, Ravens fans. If Tyler Loop makes that kick and the Ravens go to the playoffs, you probably don't have Jesse Minter right now. And Ravens fans seem pretty pleased with it. So again, everything happens for a reason. But Tyler Loop there. I think it's Ryan Eckley is the punter. New punter alert for them. No more Jordan Stout. If I got the first name wrong, I apologize. I only wrote down last names on my list here. But Jesse Minter being the head coach. I mentioned his name quite a bit of times. He was one of my favorite candidates coming into this coaching cycle. I mentioned it when I had a feeling my Giants were going to need a new head coach and Brian Daboll got fired. Jesse Minter was on the top of my list, and it was pretty clear he was going to land a job. And then when some more teams opened up, like the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, you got to think that he would have been clamoring at the opportunity to go from a defensive coordinator to a head coach of a team that is pretty damn good as it is and just needed a change of scenery. And look, I do think John Harbaugh is still a good head coach. I don't believe in the narrative that he's just not a good coach at all. I think that's crazy. But I think for the Ravens and him, it was time to move on. And new blood in the building with Jesse Minter. I really like the trajectory of him being a head coach in his career. And now, Lamar Jackson, there's urgency, though. This isn't like 2021 anymore where Lamar Jackson's in year 4. This is we're going on 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. We're in year 9. Year 9 of Lamar Jackson. And look, some quarterbacks didn't win their first Super Bowl until like year probably 8 or 9 as well. Like Peyton Manning, I think, won in like year 7 or 8. Might have even been year like 9. I might have been year 9. So again, the ring culture is just not particularly like the best. And look, we know Lamar like needs to win one, right? And that's going to be the narrative. But again, this whole team game stuff, I really do believe that. So time will tell, and we'll see what happens. But the Baltimore Ravens, I like their trajectory a lot in 2026. And again, this is always a we'll just have to wait and see what happens type of game. And that's what we're going to do. And that will be it for the Ravens, and we will end this off with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Steelers won this division on that missed kick we talked about with Tyler Loop in the Ravens. And the Steelers do what they do best. Go 9-8, 10-7, make the playoffs, and then lose in the first round. That's what they've always done the last 4, coming up now on 5 years now. That's what they do. And I'm not exactly sure if the moves they made are going to be any more than what I just talked about. But there is some good about the Steelers team to talk about, but it is also a new era in Pittsburgh from one Mike and Mike Tomlin to another Mike and Mike McCarthy as their head coach. And we'll get to the Mike McCarthy stuff later and near the end of the preview. But we'll start with the end of that bad man, Aaron Rodgers. This is it, the final ride of, in my opinion, the most talented quarterback to ever play the game of football. Now, most talented and greatest of all time are two completely different things. Just from a pure thrower of the football, I think Aaron Rodgers is probably the best to do it. Mahomes ain't too far behind him. Drew Brees was really good as well. But Aaron Rodgers, man, has been just an absolute delight to watch. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks I've had the privilege to watch. And to see this be his final season, to actually really know it's coming, is just crazy. You know, we're growing up fast, man. People in my generation, this is the sign to please don't take these athletes for granted. Please don't, because, like we had Tom Brady, we had Drew Brees. I mean, we were able to see Phillip Rivers, 44-year-old Phillip Rivers, come back and play for a little bit. That was cool, but like when he retired, it was like, man, thank you, Phillip Rivers. Ben Roethlisberger. For my Giants fans, we know how we feel about Eli Manning. Like, that era is gone. That's been gone. And all we have left, really, is Aaron Rodgers and then, like, Matthew Stafford. Like, as, like, the big-time players. So, man, I'm looking forward to watching the last ride with Aaron Rodgers here in Pittsburgh. And let's just enjoy it. No matter what the result is, whether it's a 6-11 season, whether it is another 9-8, 10, or 9-8, 10-7 season, and another first-round exit, whatever it may be, let's appreciate it while we got it. It's Aaron Rodgers, and here we go. Now, quarterback after Aaron Rodgers does get interesting because they have invested in it to maybe find their guy for the future. Mason Rudolph certainly isn't that. But he's here as a potential veteran presence. So he is the backup. So if anything was to happen to Aaron Rodgers, Rudolph would be the guy. They did draft Will Howard last year. Mike McCarthy apparently is a big Will Howard guy. So maybe there's something there. But maybe he's not a big Will Howard guy because they also drafted Drew Aller from Penn State. So Penn State, Pennsylvania, gets to stay in Pennsylvania with Pittsburgh. So that's really cool. So it's just a matter of, is the quarterback on the roster right now? Personally, if the Steelers are in the situation to take a first-round quarterback next year, it's a guy you really can't miss on, you probably take that quarterback because you don't want to bank on two guys more likely than not you're not going to see in 2026. Maybe you see a little Will Howard. Maybe you see a little Drew Aller. It's like big maybes, right? But say there's the scenario you don't get to see any of them. And say the Steelers are in like the 15th pick, let's just say. You don't think the Steelers would move up from the 15th pick to a pick higher so they can secure their quarterback instead of take a chance on one of the guys they have now? And Drew Aller, the first preseason game is already done by the time of this recording. Drew Aller looked good in the preseason. Don't get me wrong. But is that the stock you're going to put into it? Like, you're going to take a chance on Drew Aller off of one preseason game against backups? Not sure if you do that. So if you're in this scenario where you're picking, honestly, even higher than that, and that quarterback becomes available in a potential loaded 2027 draft class. I know most years we kind of say that, but this is projected to be a really good quarterback class in 2027. That's probably a year you look to do that. And if the Steelers believe that they're even like a contender and they're just a quarterback away, there's quarterbacks next year that'll become available on the free agent market. That will be guys you can insert in right away and they can play. So, like, I like the chances on guys like Aller and Howard, but I'm not sure if the future quarterback is on this roster. We'll see. Again, time tells all tales. Running back room is certainly interesting. Jaylen Warren still here. They list him as the starter, but I actually think we're going to see a little bit more of Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle got on Carolina last year and was able to, when Chuba Hubbard went down, really show what he's got. And he had 2 200-yard games back-to-back. And he showed some flashes, and then it kind of went back to Hubbard a little bit. So Dowdle, I still expect to get a lot of time here in Pittsburgh, but Jaylen Warren will get time as well with the Steelers as well. Kenneth Gainwell replacement Rico Dowdle is. Caleb Johnson, not really sure how much he's going to play, but he is listed as running back 3. So maybe from time to time he can get some things going there. The wide receiver core I do like quite a bit. DK Metcalf. Look, is DK Metcalf a bit of a crash out? Yeah, he is. Can we be honest? He absolutely is. But at the end of the day, this is still a damn good receiver. And one of the league's best. Maybe not like one of the league's like top 10 best, but this is still a player you got to respect. And again, I think maybe when that quarterback is found and we're getting more balls down the field, I think we'll be able to see that. But right now, I think more so with DK, if he's going to accumulate those yards, it's going to have to be from like running after the catch, just because of who the quarterback is, and that's Aaron Rodgers, which it's not a bad thing by any means, but it's not a great thing from like a arm strength down the field like DK has been known to do. So we'll see. Michael Pittman is also here, traded from the Indianapolis Colts. This is more of a salary dump, so the Colts were able to afford Alec Pierce. And it's an interesting little duo with Metcalf and Pittman, two really big body receivers. So we'll see how that's able to work. And the wide receiver 3 spot is interesting. Right now, Roman Wilson is the projected 3, but they do have Jeremy Bernard, who did show some fun stuff in the preseason early on. They got Ben Skoranek. They drafted Caleb Wetjen. So there's things to like in this Steelers room, not just now, but for the potential future as well. It's not a bad core to work with if you're Aaron Rodgers. Pat Freiermuth as well at tight end. Darnell Washington's also listed as a tight end, although I feel like you could argue he's like a fullback or an extra offensive lineman. 300 pounds as a tight end is crazy. He's like 6'7", 300 pounds. So big dude as well. Robert Tonyan, another fan favorite for Aaron Rodgers as the tight end 3. I imagine he makes this team because of that. The offensive line for the Steelers is an interesting one for sure. Troy Fautanu is going to be the left tackle. Could argue he was a better, could project better as a guard, but ultimately going to play left tackle. Don't think the Steelers or their fans can watch Broderick Jones try and be a tackle for them anymore on the left side. Mason McCormick, left guard. Zach Frazier, I like quite a bit. Spencer Anderson and Dylan Cook as the right guard, right tackle. A little concerned on that right side, if I had to be honest. They did, however, draft in the first round Max Ian-Acker. I think that's how you say it, I'm pretty sure. Again, this is a project. He's really raw, hasn't had much time playing tackle. So you assume that's why he's not starting right away, and I wouldn't honestly either. And then there's Jones as well. And then they did draft Jenin Dunker, the guard out of Iowa. But again, mainly for depth purposes. Maybe one of them can slot into that right guard position at some point. But time will tell, and we'll see what that looks like down the road. Defensively, the Steelers weren't particularly the best in 2025. You just got to hope that they're able to bounce back, honestly. That's really kind of what you're looking for, because they didn't really do too much in the sense of like addition. Secondary-wise, they did, but the front seven looks pretty similar. You're looking for a breakout from Derek Harmon. Shout out to Oregon for Derek Harmon. Cameron Hayward, still here, still going, still playing really strong. Another Pro Bowl year last year for him. So that's great for him. And is this the final year of Cameron Hayward? I don't know. I feel like I really haven't gotten the sense that he's done. But, maybe another year of doing what they do, he'll be done. I don't know. But it's Steelers or retirement for Cameron Hayward. He ain't going nowhere else. So that's that. Keanu Benton was another guy that got himself, I believe he got himself extended just very recently. So shout out to Keanu Benton. TJ Watt, of course, one of the best defensive players that we were able to watch in the last decade or so. We're going on year, I think, 10 of TJ Watt. And he's been a pleasure to watch. There is some questions about TJ Watt, whether or not he's going to be a Steeler in the future. Again, that's for the future. We're talking about right now, and he is one of the best pass rushers in all football. So, honestly, as long as he's on the field, you got something good. You got Alex Highsmith with him as well. Nick Herbig got himself paid quite a bit. There's a lot of talent on this Steelers front seven. Jack Sawyer could be a rotational guy for them as well. But that three, man, Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig can rush the passer and get into coverage a little bit. That's a really good and fun little trio there in that linebacker core, whether it's outside linebacker more so than just linebacker core in general. By the way, for my breakout, I'll just say this because I forgot to mention it, because I already mentioned him. I'll go Derek Harmon. Maybe it's some Oregon bias, But I think he has all the tools to just be a game wrecker in the NFL. Absolute game wrecker for Oregon. Was at Michigan State before that. But I think last year, a bit of like a work in progress. Now this year, pair him up with another year of Cameron Hayward and a fully healthy Watt and Highsmith. I think this could be a good year for Derek Harmon. So that's fun. Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen are the main linebackers in this core. Patrick Queen, the former Raven. Peyton Wilson, I liked coming out of the draft. He just had some big injury issues, hence why he fell a little bit in the draft, but still like Peyton Wilson quite a bit. Cole Holcomb and this Landon Roberts. That's two veterans that could be some special teams, but also could find their way into that linebacker room. And then that corner room is filled with some damn good players. Joey Porter Jr., really good player. His dad, of course, former Joey Porter Sr., longtime Pittsburgh Steeler. So see what Joey Porter Jr. is able to do as corner one, I would say. I mean, there was questions last year a little bit when they had a certain Jalen Ramsey, who's also still in this core. But Joey Porter Jr. is probably going to be the guy lining up with the team's best guy. And he was doing that a little bit last year as well. So, like the trajectory of Joey Porter Jr. And they have Jalen Ramsey, as we mentioned. He's going to be more of like your nickel corner now. Can get into safety a little bit if you want him to. But with who they signed, I imagine he more so plays that nickel spot. Jamel Dean, they were able to sign as well from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was a guy I wanted the Giants to sign quite a bit, but ends up going to Pittsburgh to pair up with Joey Porter. I like the fit a lot. And Jamel Dean's been, probably the Buccaneers' best corner the last 2 years or so, and now heads to Pittsburgh, so that's nice. Asante Samuel Jr. also in this building, so another former NFL player. And Asante Samuel Sr., his son's also on this team. Dalen Everett, guy that they recently just drafted as well. And then you have the safety room, the signing of Jaquan Brisker. Has had a lot of injury issues since coming into the league, but when he's been on the field, he's been really good with the Chicago Bears, and kind of obvious he was never going to re-sign with Chicago, with the whole scheme change thing and everything with Ben Johnson. So you knew he was out the door. Goes to Pittsburgh to pair up with Deshaun Elliott. I've been a big Deshaun Elliott guy since he was in Baltimore. He was on Miami for a little bit. He was on Detroit. Just a guy that really hasn't been able to stay healthy, but then went to Pittsburgh and kind of found his stride in being healthy, and he's been a solid, serviceable player since being there. So that's a lot of fun. Rayshawn Jenkins, another veteran in the room, who's shown some flashes of being, solid, but more so is going to be a special teamer at this point in his career. And then you have Chris Boswell as the kicker. I would probably say top 3-ish or so kicker in football. You can even argue he's probably the best right now. Chris Boswell's been great. Cam Johnston is the punter. And that's the Steelers preview. And just quickly before we cap this off, just talk about Mike McCarthy. And you look at, we were going to mention this earlier about Mike McCarthy. This is a head coach that not many people in Pittsburgh were a fan of once he was officially hired. And it's just really, to me, just a bit of a boring option when you look at the options that were available. You look at Baltimore, your division rival, they hired Jesse Minter as their head coach. You look at, obviously, maybe John Harbaugh is not the most fun option, but that was a big time hire by the Giants. And the Raiders brought in a young guy in Clint Kubiak. So think about all the people that brought in younger guys that can be fun, like Joe Brady with the Buffalo Bills. And I don't know, the Steelers, to me, I just feel played it really, really safe. And maybe this was a move just to keep Aaron Rodgers for an extra year because they had no clue what to do at quarterback because they didn't have a high enough pick to get their quarterback. I don't know. But either way, I like the Steelers team overall. But I think it's pretty clear to acknowledge that the Ravens and the Bengals made themselves better. and are now on a higher trajectory than they are. But here's the thing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. When you count them out like this, they will find a way to win 9 or 10 games and sneak into the playoffs, and maybe when most people would believe they have no business being there in the first place. So don't count out the Pittsburgh Steelers just because it's just not smart to do. Aaron Rodgers, this is his final season. He's going to want to go out doing his thing. And I don't know if doing his thing is a 5-12, 6-11 season. It's, winning more games than you lost, getting to the playoffs, and just hoping for the best. And, he's got the weapons to do it with DK and Michael Pittman and Freiermuth and Rico Dowdle. The offensive line, to me, is a big question, so we'll see how that looks. And defensively, I think you're kind of just banking on a bounce-back year. There's not much really additions-wise except for Dean and Brisker. But outside of that, you're just hoping that they can just kind of figure it out with a new scheme. So we will see. But before we cap this off, I just wanted to take a quick little second to plug my new wrestling podcast. I made an announcement on Facebook, so if you're from Facebook watching this, you guys already know this, but I'm going to put the link in the description down below. Squared Circle Life podcast. We're talking all things wrestling, debates, news, reviews, everything professional wrestling, WWE. We'll sprinkle in some AEW from time to time. Me and 2 of my buddies that are great friends to me, and we all love professional wrestling. If you guys also love professional wrestling, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. 2 episodes are already out currently right now, and we're just going to keep pumping that stuff out as well as I'll be doing here. So thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. God bless. Take care.